a rendition of How Great Thou Art from Miss Turon Nicholas.
Oh Lord, my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all of the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy path throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. And when I think that God his Son, not sparing, sent him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on the cross my burdens gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. When Christ shall come with shouts of acclamation to take me home, what joy shall fill my heart? Then I shall bow in humble adoration. My God, who made the
the man who holds all of Team PNM together. The man who the UNC is desperate to demonize because they understand that unless they paint him as a villain, the whole world will see the hero that he is. A man who has walked through the fire in defense of his beliefs time and time again, and who has come out on the other end better and stronger for it. A man who has always stood up for what he believed in, alone if necessary, and against the most unimaginable odds. Before the Integrity Commission, after Integrity Commission, Commission of Inquiry after Commission of Inquiry, and even before biased parliaments, and has survived each and every battle, standing tall and standing proud. A man who cannot be kept down, a true fighter, a man who won't run and hide when things get rough, a man who will work and do the work the country needs to be done, not fet and lip sync down the place while the country burns. The political leader who will restore decency and dignity to the office of the Prime Minister, the political leader who will lift this country's flag out from the gutters into which Kamla Persad-Bissessar and the UNC have dragged it, the political leader who will shake out that flag, dust it off, and fly it high and proud among our Caribbean neighbors. Join me then in welcoming to the microphone our political leader, and make no mistake, my dear friends, the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley.
The higher you build your barriers, something inside so strong.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair Lady of tonight's proceedings, my former cabinet colleague, and currently the campaign manager for our constituency in Pointe-à-Pierre, Mrs. Christine Kangaloo, Party Chairman Mr. Franklin Khan, Deputy Political Leaders, Mrs. Joe Neal Williams, responsible for party and elections, Mr. Rohan Sinanan, Deputy Political Leader, Policy and our campaign manager in 2015, Ms. Marlene MacDonald, Deputy Political Leader, Legislative and Member of Parliament in waiting for the election day to represent the people of Port-au-Spain South again, other party officers, the Mayor of San Fernando, Alderman Kazim Hussain and his councillors, other members of local government, party officers, all members, supporters, and the tens of thousands of fellow citizens listening at home in Trinidad and Tobago. A very good night to you from the PNM platform here in Cocoyea village in San Fernando. When I saw the black clouds hanging over San Fernando this afternoon, I thought I'll get a night off because it might rain. But then certain PNM people started to pray. And before the sun went down, the sun came out. And we're having a lovely evening here in Cocoyea village. But great things happen to us in the PNM. Ladies and gentlemen, on my way down here tonight, I listened to the young lady, Ms. Shepherd, who spoke, because in all our platforms, we give the opportunity for a young person to speak. Not because we are short of speakers, but because these young people inspire us to take responsibility for all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I heard the maiden speech on a platform for our new offerings to the people of San Fernando East, Mr. Randall Mitchell. And if there was any doubt that we have selected wisely and selected well, tonight that maiden speech indicates that San Fernando East is in good hands. It must have been about 3 weeks or so ago that the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago was dissolved. And all members of Parliament, barring those who are allowed to stay on and conduct business until election day, all members of Parliament ceased to be such on that Wednesday night when the Parliament dissolved. What that means is that Mr. Patrick Manning, the Member of Parliament for San Fernando East up until 3 Wednesdays ago, would have ended a tremendous tour of duty to the people of San Fernando East and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And tonight, one of the first things I want to do here on this ground in Cocoyea is to say thank you, thank you, thank you to a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago who served his people well. And to indicate that we have taken very good care to ensure that the baton that he held has been passed into very safe hands, the hands of Randall Mitchell. We are currently engaged in a national election campaign. We'll be very busy with this campaign until the 7th of September. But as a party, one of the first things we will do after the 7th of September is to have a tremendous function of the highest quality to honor the service of Patrick Augustus Morgan Manning. So that is on the offing. But ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight representing an organization in its 60th year. And if there is one attribute that we have earned, which is very valuable, and will continue to earn it, is one that represents political stability on the landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. And that stability is even more required when there are serious challenges ahead. In fact, notwithstanding what our detractors might say, it is in times of greatest difficulty that the people of Trinidad and Tobago look to the PNM for support and for its own salvation. Before 1956, we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, were like any ordinary colonial backwater, picking up what was left for us from the colonial masters, and every day was like the day before, with no great vision of a bright new day for our young people and misery for our elderly. In 1956, the PNM under Eric Williams changed that. When he let his bucket down in Woodford Square and won the majority of seats and got control of the affairs of Trinidad and Tobago, a brighter day began to dawn in Trinidad and Tobago. 1956 PNM. And the lives of every family in this country was changed with the coming of a PNM government in 1956. It hadn't been smooth sailing all along, but most days we competently managed the waves of nationhood. Then of course when the troubles came in 1970, and there were those who felt that that was the end of the PNM, the population looked to the PNM in 1971 for that stability, that guidance out of a forest of difficulty. Then of course, we found ourselves out of office in 1986. But by 1990, there was trouble again, even worse than 1970. The parliament was invaded, the police headquarters was bombed, lives were lost, and for a moment, it sounded like the people of Trinidad and Tobago had lost their way. In 1991, the population turned again to the PNM, and the PNM took us out of our difficulty on the road to progress. Of course, in 1995, there was a change of government again, smooth, competent, and another party got into office. But by the year 2000, another election took place. But by 2001, that government had collapsed. In fact, it imploded. There were 3 ministers of government that broke rank with the government on the issue of corruption. There are those who would like us to forget that. We went to the polls in 2000, 2001, 2002, and it was to the PNM that the country turned when those developments took place. So from 2001, December, it was Christmas Eve, I think it was, PNM came in, we went to the polls in 2002, and we served until 2010. A new government came in 2010, and the PNM gave way, offered our congratulations, and offered our support in the public interest. But by 2015, the general sentiment in Trinidad and Tobago is that we just can't go on this way. We've had enough, no more. And I have every confidence, like it happened before, it will happen in 2015, when the people of Trinidad and Tobago once again turn to the PNM for its stability, for its salvation, in the interest of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But there's a campaign between now and September 7th. And it is clear to me and to all discerning eyes and ears that the major ingredient that we will come up against in this campaign is a campaign of lies and misrepresentation. But you see, when the population cannot accept what is said by office holders in Trinidad and Tobago, we are in as great a difficulty as we were when Abu Bakr took over the parliament. And for those of you who don't believe, just look at what's been happening so far. Faris spoke about the PNM candidates on the ground knocking on your doors and offering themselves as representatives of a 60-year-old party with a long and proud record, coming to you and campaigning and saying to you what we are going to do if you put us into office and who we are if we get into office and who we'll work for when we get into office. Those who are opposed to us don't have to do that. All they have to do is to wait until the last minute and offer you the same fare that upset your stomach so badly. But they're hoping that in the meantime, on your radio, on the television, and on the newspapers, they will bombard you with the misrepresentations and the lies to the extent that you'll become numb and you'll forget what they really are. But tonight, the campaign is a long one. So I have time to go into dealing with the issues that they offer to us. Because we of the PNM, we are not afraid to engage. And we will engage. We will speak our own truths. And we will represent ourselves. We will not allow others to review the history and revise it to suit themselves and to talk to you as though there was no PNM to tell you the truth. They would love for us to do that, you know, so that you can think that you didn't live the last 5 years. So you see, I was reading the papers and I saw an appeal being made to me by a leader of a party that is part of the coalition under the UNC. And he said to me publicly that one of the things the PNM must do in this election is to tell the country what we are going to do about property tax. Now, ladies and gentlemen, nobody likes to make tax an issue in an election. But this particular gentleman, a fellow called Prakash Ramadan, who speaks for the UNC, he made a career on dealing with property tax in 2010. He led the march around the country and the rally in Bernard Promenade on Axe the Tax. You remember that? And tonight I will show you what the people of Trinidad and Tobago had to deal with and what the situation is. The Axe the Tax man, for 5 years, had nothing to say about tax. Had nothing to say about Axe the Tax. But a few weeks from the general election, he thinks that he can survive this election with the UNC the same way he came into office in 2010 on property tax. And somehow believe that the PNM is afraid to engage the issue. So therefore he can come and promote property tax again and demonize the PNM as though we have some mission to tax people in Trinidad and Tobago. We, the PNM, for the benefit of those who didn't remember, it was the PNM that brought income tax down to 25% from where it was. Today, all you employed people, you are paying income tax at a 25% level. That's a PNM initiative under Patrick Manning. I was a member of the cabinet then. It was the PNM that said that if you're earning $5,000 or less per month, you pay absolutely no tax. That is all recorded taxation. It was the PNM that removed taxes of a variety of issues. But in a general election of 2015, where Prakash Ramadhan and his colleagues in the UNC want a campaign issue, he raises a question to me to respond about the PNM's position on property tax. Mr. Prakash Ramadhan, here is your answer. We will do the same thing that the UNC is doing now, which is to observe the law. Let me show you what they did. The existing legislation in Trinidad and Tobago for collecting taxes on land and buildings is the Property Tax Act of 2009. Act number 18 of 2009. That is the law. Prakash Ramadhan is a lawyer, he's a parliamentarian, he is chairman of the legislative committee of the cabinet, so he knows that. The law as you are standing in front of me here tonight on property tax is Act number 18 of 2009. Assented to in December 2009. Now, that they won the election in May 2010. And of course, the land and building taxes bill, theirs was laid in the parliament in 2011. So in other words, they campaigned in 2010 against the tax. When they became the government, they came to the parliament and laid a bill in 2011, a land and building tax. And then when they were called out for doing the same thing they criticized on the campaign into government, they allowed that bill to lapse in June 2011 when the parliament broke. That's a fact. But the law is still there as of 2009. So what did they do? Finance Minister Winston Tukaran, he announced through the Prime Minister that they are giving a waiver for 2010, no taxes for 2010. That is how they dealt with it. So nobody in the country was going to pay property tax for 2010. And then that went on until the new Minister of Finance came in, Mr. Hawaii, and he too joined the waiver and gave waivers. But he did something else that Mr. Prakash Ramadhan knows about. He went back and he said that they will change the property tax regime into 3 phases. In other words, the government of Trinidad and Tobago will return to collecting taxes, but they'll break it up into 3 parts. The first part, which will kick in at the time that the minister was reading his budget, was for commercial properties. they'll begin to collect tax on commercial properties, and they did that. And then after that, they will collect taxes on industrial and agricultural properties, and they did that. And the third phase, which they put to come in after the election, they will collect taxes on residential properties after the election of 2015. That's what it is. That is what the Minister of Finance of the UNC has put in place in the Parliament. And that being so, why then is Prakash Amada asking me about property tax? He thought I was sleeping in the Parliament. He thought I wasn't leading the opposition. He thought I wasn't leading the PNM. He thought I wasn't leading for you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. What I have just said there to you is the law that they put in place, that they have in place. They have already kicked in phase 1 and phase 2. In fact, he spoke about, let me tell you what phase 1, and in fact, let me quote for you the Minister of Finance. Because you see these lies that this government is telling, you see this misinformation, you, the people, need to have the facts and the evidence of their misconduct to know how to see them and how to treat them. Let me quote for you from the budget. This is 2001, 2002. This is Mr. Yetming, and I'll come back to him in a minute. Listen to him. Mr. Speaker, in keeping with our objective of transforming our tax administration into one that is more efficient and equitable, government will undertake a reform of the existing property taxation regime. The new system will allow for a more equitable taxation of properties. Phase 1 of the reform has been completed and focused on the development of a new property taxation system, as well as a detailed mapping and valuation of properties in pilot sites in Arima and Point Lisas. Phase 2 will focus on full-scale valuation of all properties through an aerial survey throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and will span a period of 2 years beginning in 2001. That is Gerald Yetming, the Minister of Finance under the UNC. Yet you have Prakash Amada coming to ask me, leader of the PNM, about property tax, as though some demon exists in that phrase and is something that belongs to the PNM. And then they come to the Parliament and put it in place, give you amnesty for 2 or 3 years under Winston Dukaran and under Larry Horai, put a new system in place to kick in after the election and think we're not noticing. Prakash Amada, we have nothing to add. You've done it, we will obey the law. The PNM is a law-abiding party. And if you think that that is what's going to get you elected, try again. But let me explain to you what has been going on in this country, why the PNM had said that we need to review the whole system of taxation collection. Assuming there is no new law, there's nothing happening to the existing law before 2009. Listen to what the story was. Under land and building taxes. In 1994, this country collected $109 million as the take on land and building taxes. But the tax collection had become so inefficient and so ineffective that by 1997, the collection was only $56 million. So you had more houses built, you had the original houses still in place, you collected $109 million in 1994, but you find yourself collecting $56 million in 1997. Problems of collection of the tax. And by 2001, you're collecting $59 million. By 2005, 10 years later, you were collecting $62 million. So something was radically wrong with our taxation collection. You're collecting $109 million in 1994, but on the same housing stock and a larger housing stock, you were collecting $62 million 10 years later. And the PNM government, a responsible government, said what we need to do is to have a better collection system so that the tax system be collected. And we came up with the idea, not by VAPs, but by looking at the best arrangement for improving the tax collection. And we said we'll have a revenue authority that has overall responsibility for collecting the various aspects of the tax. The same way Prakash Amada led a rally against Yetming's property tax. They led a rally through Watson Duke against the Revenue Authority. Remember that? That was the campaign of 2010. And they won the election. And of course, they did absolutely nothing for the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago and to treat with the problem. It remains the same place. That is why tonight, I can say here and say, as I've said before, that the incoming PNM government will put as part of our policy prescription the bringing into being of a revenue authority that will improve the collection of taxes in Trinidad and Tobago. That's like that. And the workers who are now in inland revenue will have all kinds of opportunities available to them, either to work in the new authority, to work somewhere else, or to leave the service if they choose. There'll be no force feeding or no force action. We're simply changing the administration of taxation collection. Who in this country is telling us, let the system remain the same? The candidate for Tobago East? Watson Duke? We're competing with him in Tobago East for the seat in Tobago East. We'll treat him with respect and we'll send him back to you. But the important thing is that there's a problem to be addressed. And the problems of Trinidad and Tobago, whenever they arise, they always lie to be addressed by the people's national movement. That has been our history, it is our destiny, and we will not fail you. So we'll do that, and we know how to do it. We are a responsible party, and we will run a responsible government. But the lies, the misrepresentation, the smart manism. Imagine Prakash trying to pull that stunt on me. And of course, I was in New York last weekend. And I came down to breakfast in the hotel, and one of my colleagues showed me his phone. I could not believe what I was seeing. I read it again and again, and I realized it was me. I wasn't even here. I wasn't even there. But Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, going out of her way to convince the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and I dare say the East Indian population, that I am in some league with Jack Warner to undo this female Prime Minister. Me. And I'm wondering what goes through the mind of Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Even if they tell her to do that, even if somebody tell her to do that, shouldn't she know to say to them, I can't do that? Because if there's one person in this country who she cannot attach Jack Warner to, it is Keith Rowley. Because it is Keith Rowley, leader of the opposition, who raised with her from day one the dangers of her love fest with Jack Warner. But she somehow believes that the same way Prakash believes that he could fool you with property tax, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa believes that she could fool you by spreading Jack Warner's calamity of the UNC onto the PNM and onto Keith Rowley. And here the proof of me being in bed with Jack Warner. That Jack Warner came to a march organized by farmers in my constituency. The PNM took part in the march, the MSJ took part in the march, some churches took part in the march, we all took part in the march, and I greeted Jack Warner when he came in and greeted me in my constituency. Well, if greeting Jack Warner by shaking his hand when he extended it to me, put him in bed with me, where am I with a woman who gave me a cupcake? Because she came to Point Kumana, also my parliamentary colleague, I greeted her, and she brought gifts. Jack Warner only brought a hand to shake. She brought a cupcake, she gave it to me, and the same way I remembered my upbringing from my grandparents. So when Jack Warner extended his hand to me, I shook his hand and said, good day. When she offered me a cupcake, which could easily have been hemlock or strychnine, I received it, I thanked her, I smiled, and there goes the cupcake. And a friend of hers called me and said, don't eat that. But you know, they say, it is not the gift, it's the thought. So I accepted the thought. I didn't eat the cake. But you know, there's something very serious happening here. Of all the legacies that the PNM would have left on the landscape of Trinidad and Tobago from 1956 to now, the most enduring legacy and probably the most valuable is the sustenance of interracial solidarity among the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That is a PNM legacy. We all celebrate Christmas together. We celebrate Diwali. We celebrate Eid. We celebrate Carnival. We argue during the year, but we respect each other. Trinidad and Tobago must be the most complex country in the world. In Northern Ireland, Christians were killing one another across the street. In the Middle East, Muslims are killing Muslims. But in Trinidad and Tobago, Muslims, Hindus, and Christians live together in peace and harmony under 60 years of PNM existence. And that is why I take objection, I take strong objection to the racial campaign being run by the UNC in 2015. And they believe that the PNM will do nothing about it. Because once you say race, the PNM run and hide. Well, not under my leadership. Not under my leadership. If you engage us, we'll engage you. Because we have nothing to fear, nothing to be ashamed of. So, let me take you down this Jack Warner story. For one reason and one reason only. The reason is that the UNC, in responding to the Jack Warner calamity, is waging a campaign to make it an ethnic thing. And that is why they're trying to draw me into it, so that I can be in the same boat with Jack Warner. Let me tell you what the record is. When I raised the problem of Jack Warner with the Prime Minister in June 2010, you know what the headline in the Express was? 18th of April. Warner has full cabinet support. National Security Minister Jack Warner has the full support of every single member of the cabinet. Communications Minister Jamal Mohammed said yesterday. So Jamal Mohammed, who spoke for the Prime Minister and the cabinet, told us that in the face of objections from the PNM and the rest of the country, that Jack Warner has the full support of the cabinet. So what is Mrs. Prasad Bisasa calling my name for? And what is the UNC trying to pass Jack Warner on to us for? In October 2007, Jack Warner was welcomed as the chairman of the UNC. In December of that year, he became a member of parliament put up by the UNC. In 2010, he became the chief whip in the parliament. In May of 2010, he was made Minister of Works and Transport and Minister of Everything. And in June of that year, as opposition leader, I wrote the Integrity Commission questioning the appointment of Jack Warner. Who else did that in the parliament or in the country? And the Newsday of June 10, 2010, this was the headline, Richardson Dalai, quoting the Prime Minister, Kamala backs Warner. And her comment was, among other comments, I don't think Mr. Rowley needs to campaign on that issue. It is something we are mindful of, and we will do what is best and correct. Let me repeat that. This is the Prime Minister talking in June 2010 on the Jack Warner issue. I don't think Mr. Rowley needs to campaign on that issue. It is something we are mindful of, and we will do what is best and correct. And that was our cue to know that she will do something else. 1 week later, headline in the Newsday, June 18, 2010, Kamala, Jack stays put. 1 week before, she will do what is best and correct. And what was best and correct is that Jack stays put. And you know how Jack stayed put? You, the taxpayers, paid 4 eminent senior counsels to tell you what I told her for free. The 4 senior counsels that they hired, among them Fenton Ramsey, Ellis Clark, Mr. Beloff, the Englishman. You know what they asked the senior counsels? They asked the senior counsels whether it was a breach of any law. The answer was no. There was no breach of any law. It was an ethical understanding that it was violating the parliamentary code of ethics. And Robinson himself, when he moved that motion in the parliament, he said it does not have the force of law. It will be for the population to take notice and act against any breach. It's an ethical breach. So when they hired the senior counsels, they could have hired 4 or 40. They knew that the answer would have been that there's no breach of the law, but the wrongdoing was an ethical breach. So when they came and told you that Beloff said this and Ramsey said that, it was an attempt to fool you because we were never arguing law. We were arguing potential conflict of interest. We were arguing, and I was saying to her, the potential for Jack Warner's private business and FIFA scandal to be drawn into Trinidad and Tobago's business is there if you put him in the cabinet. It wasn't law, it was requiring a judgment on the part of the Prime Minister, and boy did she so bad judgment. And of course, you know, Anand Ramlogan, he's the one who was organizing the lawyers. And he told you can't say he didn't tell you. He said, it is solely up to the Prime Minister Prasad Bisesa to determine whether Jack Warner stays in the cabinet. And Mrs. Prasad Bisesa says that Warner is fit to serve. And then, of course, Mr. Warner puts up his defense. You see, because April 2013, once again doing my job, I filed a motion in the parliament. And permit me to read the motion to you tonight because I will not let Mrs. Prasad Bisesa and the UNC disrupt this campaign and mislead you about Jack Warner as any issue in this campaign. They had the opportunity before to deal with Jack Warner and they chose which side they were on. They were on Jack Warner's side. At the PNM and all the other right-thinking citizens, we had another side. So I filed a motion in the parliament on April 26, 2013. This is 3 years after I objected to him going in the cabinet. Motion in the parliament, April 26, failure of the Prime Minister to act. Whereas the private activities of the Member of Parliament for Chaguanas West and former Minister of National Security, has been the subject of widespread adverse commentary, censure, and inferences, both locally and internationally, which are in conflict with his position as a Minister of Government. And whereas the actions and conduct of the former National Security Minister have been the subject of widespread adverse commentary, censure, and inferences, both locally and internationally, and whereas the former Minister of National Security and his business partners have been linked to or associated with a number of alleged investigations into alleged misconduct or alleged criminal offenses, both locally and internationally, which have attracted widespread adverse commentary, be it resolved that this Honorable House express its disapproval of the failure of the Prime Minister to act expeditiously to take appropriate action to protect the image and interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, which have consistently been damaged by the actions and business of the member for Chaguanas West. That was the motion I filed in the Parliament. And guess what? Guess what? Mr. Warner defended himself. Listen to Mr. Warner's defense. Mr. Speaker, every criticism, every allegation against me has been in the public domain for the last 20 years. You think Ms. Kamala Prasad Bisasa was around for them 20 years? And he goes on to say, nothing new. They rewrite, they remodel, they rebrand, yes. Rebrand, but it is the same criticism. That was Mr. Warner taking a position on my motion, saying to all of them in the UNC, especially the Prime Minister, we know this. So where is Ms. Kamala Prasad Bisasa coming from now to suddenly discover that Jack Warner have leprosy and he belonged to the PNM? And of course, one husbandman whose wife was being supported by Jack Warner, we found out after, one Munilal, he was in there too in the motion. Listen to him. Listen to him. Mr. Speaker, this motion, to use the Latin term, is ocious. The motion is ocious. O-T-I-O-S-E. Derived from ocious. O-T-I-O-S-U-S. It is ocious, meaning that the motion serves no practical purpose. It has no point. It has no reason. It has no purpose. It is null, void, and futile. That is Rulal Munilal, who thinks he's a clown. But what we didn't know then, we know now. Jack Warner was mining him. So when I move a motion about Jack Warner's suitability, and he pretended to be representing Oropouche East himself, and even when Jack Warner come out and say, boy, hush your mouth, I was mining you and your family, he said, no, it's not true. And then all of a sudden, Jack Warner produced a series of checks every month. I don't know if you're a Jack Warner handyman, his gardener, his driver, but every month, Jack Warner's check show his name with $7,000. And all I want to ask him tonight, that $7,000 a month Jack Warner was paying you, did you declare it to the Integrity Commission? Because if you deny that Jack Warner was paying you, I have to assume that you deny the Integrity Commission too. But he knows I didn't file my property in One Woodbrook Place. My wife and I own an apartment in One Woodbrook Place that we paid for. He went to the Parliament with the deed, and he knows I didn't declare to the Integrity Commission after he tried to imply that I got it for free from the developer. So he knows what I didn't file. So I'm free to ask him tonight, the money you earn from Jack Warner, $7,000 a month, that published every day in the Sunshine, did you declare it to the Integrity Commission? And if the answer is yes, why then were you lying to us and say Jack Warner didn't pay you any money? You all understand the kinds of people who have the affairs of state in Trinidad and Tobago? And of course, it wasn't only Munilal who jumped to the defense of Jack Warner then, you know. There was one called Arnold Roberts. Man, he spoke at length because he was their pit bull. And of course, Rowley was the demon. And of course, Anna Logan says, in the Express of April 27, 2013, I won't probe Jack. In other words, and get a free pass. But you know, what they're aiming to do now is to make the 2015 campaign one of a race. So, Fitzgerald Hines, at a meeting in Belmont, said that Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Ashwood Jack, one leading the UNC, one leading the TOP, both of whom had houses constructed involving a particular contractor. One said he built a house from Pumpkin, one had the contractor paint off his name from his equipment when he was working in the Prime Minister yard. And in that murky environment, Mr. Hines was saying, Ashwood Jack and Kamla Prasad Bisesa, both of them alligators from the same murky lagoon. You know they see race? I don't know what race Ashwood Jack is, but I seem to remember the last time I saw him, he was Hines' race. And the Prime Minister jumps out with Satmaraj behind, saying that Hines must be chastised for racial comment. And the Prime Minister now appeals to the 1/3 population in the country not to support Hines and the PNM. And who is the 1/3 population? The Indian population. Appealing to them that Hines' argument about the house that they can't explain in Tobago and Philippines, that is race. In other words, scare the PNM away from asking the questions that they have to answer, because Ashwood Jack was made to answer in Tobago, you know. When he said he built the house from pumpkin and cucumber, Tobagonians took the answer for what it was worth and kicked Ashwood Jack out of Parliament in Tobago. And in Trinidad, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa don't want you to ask her how come she gets so wealthy to build that mansion when it couldn't be built before. And why was the contractor who was working there painting off his name from the equipment? And why he became the contractor of choice of this government that got over $2 billion in work all over the place. She doesn't want that. She wants you to discuss race. And goes on to tell our young children, our children who are not yet properly educated in the country's history, that the PNM is somehow a demon party that you will stay away from. The PNM is the party that built this country and gave opportunity to everybody of race, color, creed, or class. And when they were going to slander me and my father in the Parliament, and by the way, have you heard Munilal begging Jack Warner not to interfere with families? You heard that? Jack Warner, in his UNC exposés, talking about who get money and who get what else and who pay with what and who didn't pay. Munilal is now saying, leave our families alone. That is the same Munilal who told you he took Vanilla Allen to the Parliament. He approved her speech to slander me. Dig up my dead father and slander he too. But all of a sudden, Munilal wants families to be left alone. That is the same Munilal who went down to Orapush the night before and put up a banner, coded racial banner. Hide your children from Keith Rowley. As if we don't understand what they're doing. We understand it very well, Mr. Munilal. You are trying to demonize me and the PNM along racial lines in 2015 to survive and become the government again. But the people of this country are not blind and we are not foolish and we've had enough of you. And if you believe that the PNM will not engage you, wrong time, wrong leader. In Aranguez, as we are calling on this government to explain its stewardship, tell us your policies, why you did certain things. They put a banner up in Aranguez. Jack Warner and Keith Rowley stop attacking our families and put the Hindu home on the banner. People of Trinidad and Tobago, these people are playing with fire. If you want to convert your defense into invoking the symbolism of your religion, you are asking for trouble in a multiracial, multi-religious society. And the Prime Minister and the UNC must be scolded and asked to turn away from that. It wasn't sufficient in the by-election in St. Joseph that Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa authorized her government to go into Aranguez, pull up a table and give out $2 million in taxpayers' money the Sunday before election. So they're playing flood victims. That's what they did, in the by-election. But they lost anyway. That was only money. But in this campaign, it's a banner with the sacred symbol of the Hindu religion on it, attacking Keith Rowley and Jack Warner. We understand the coded symbol tonight. I appeal to Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa and the UNC to stop playing fast and loose with the stability of Trinidad and Tobago. We have been in opposition for 5 years. We took that opportunity to review all our policies and programs. We brought people from inside the party and persons who were not members of the party, but they had talent to contribute. And we reviewed all our policies and programs. And in 2015, our manifesto will take the form of a summary document of the main points, but a number of subsidiary documents in more detail on education, on health, in agriculture, in energy, and so on and so on. So that when a minister comes into office on the 8th of September, that minister will have a document of Pnm policy in that area of activity, having been reviewed, having been prepared. So you won't get this policy on the hoof of ministers making policy on their own, depending on which microphone in front of their face. And what you will not get is the instability that is the hallmark of political parties other than the PNM in Trinidad and Tobago. You will not have people being in the government and not knowing who they are and who they represent. I can tell you, one day I was in the parliament and Wade Mark, the speaker, called on the Minister of Local Government to present something that was on the document, and 3 of them got up. It took about a minute and a half for them among themselves to decide who will sit down and who will stay standing. 5 ministers of national security in a crime wave in Trinidad and Tobago. 5. And they think that is success. The largest number of members of a government having to be removed for misconduct was under Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, because she was the queen of misconduct. And until she could answer to us who authorized Section 34 Independence Night of 2012, she stands accused of being the queen of misconduct, because there was nothing more heinous in this country than a prime minister allowing her cabinet to use the parliament, to dupe the parliament, to dupe the population, to allow the party financiers to escape the court. That is what Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa stands accused of. So they could put as much ad on the TV as they want, your government working for you as much as they want. They could use CNMG as much as they want to promote the UNC campaign, and they could try to demonize me and the PNM as much as they want. Truth will prevail in Trinidad and Tobago. Truth will prevail. One of the major aspects of our policy coming in 2015 is that once and for all, this issue of local government reform will be dealt with. And based on the experience we've had in Tobago over the last 20-odd years, we are confident that we can give more authority to local government, give them more resources, and get a better outturn with respect to serving the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Today I received the document on local government reform, and it will be a major part of our manifesto. It involves all of the areas of responsibilities that we'll give to local government. It has identified all the laws that have to be adjusted so as to do that, and to remove the Minister of Local Government and let local government executive deal directly with the relevant department of the Ministry of Finance. It will involve no loss of jobs to employees of local government. They will simply be working for the regional corporation that is being funded by the Ministry of Finance. Their propaganda is to go out there And guess what? You know God don't sleep. The bulk of the local government workers are under the NUGFW. And my former PNM councillor from Point Kumana and Shagaramas, a fella called James Lambert, the UNC is out there telling local government workers that Rowley want to close down the ministry and you're all going to lose your work. How stupid. You're removing the minister. But the workers who deliver the services, whether they're under this ministry or that ministry, their jobs are still in place. They're still public officials. And in this case, they will be working for the corporation in a more secure and more effective way. And there'll be greater opportunity for them to elevate themselves because local government will be given more responsibility and more resources. So Lambert goes to Cuba on their contrived Labor Day celebration. And he fulminated and he agitated. And as he was about to leave the stage, good PNM that he is, he says, when you go to the polls, make no mistake, vote solidly for the People's National Movement. And if Lambert could tell you that, what more can I say to you, the people of Cocoyea? When you go to the polls on the 7th of September, do like what Lambert said. Whether you are PNM, whether you are COP, whether you are UNC, just remember, Lambert said, vote solidly for the People's National Movement. Thank you and good night.
There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. The political leader of the PNM and the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, the right, the honorable, the brilliant, the self-assured, the committed Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. This brings us to the end of our discourse with you this evening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us this evening and for hearing of our party's plans to improve the image and the day-to-day lives of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your love. Thank you for our great nation. May God bless us all as we work towards a brighter future for Trinidad and Tobago. May God bless us as we make our way back to our homes this evening. Be careful on the roads, be courteous on the roads, and never forget, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we shall prevail. Good night.